ladies and gentlemen, my honor and privilege to ask Dr. Bede Nwete to come on board. He is a commercial energy and upstream tax and finance lawyer. I guess this is the right time after hearing the opportunities and prospects upside from Dr. Faisal. It's a good time to hear from somebody who brings in the commercial and legal and tax perspectives. He is vice president of one of the independents that is playing across Africa and Asia. And it comes with a lot of exposure and experience in oil and gas finance, oil and gas governance. Dr. Bede, please. My pleasure.
Well, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, gentlemen and ladies, depending on where you are. I would like to offer my thanks to Dr. Felix and the Dr. Emielu for the opportunity to speak. And without much ado, actually, I'm going to speak from the two perspectives. One is from the perspective of an investor who has invested in Nigeria. My company has invested in Nigeria, and I've had a lot of experience working in Nigeria as well. Because when you talk about the problems, it's somebody who is actually wearing the shoe that will tell you what is the problem. Because as it is today, my company would never, ever, ever go back to Nigeria in terms of offering money to go and start exploration and all the rest of them. And I'll tell you some of the reasons. And the second perspective is that I will offer, because even now as I speak, we have been trying to sell our equity in a block in Nigeria. So that will tell you how bad it is. And then I will also speak as somebody who has, over the years, tried to raise money and bring in companies, new companies into the mix in terms of starting new oil and gas projects and activities. And I do go back to what Dr. Felix said earlier on. I mean, we talk about clean energy. We talk about transition, from oil and gas to renewable and all the rest of them. And I've been so lucky, and God has been so kind to me that I've played again in other countries. I've advised countries like Mauritania, Barbados, and a lot of other countries in terms of oil and gas. For example, BP today invests in the biggest offshore project, gas project in Mauritania, which is the GTA. I negotiated that deal for the government of Mauritania and Senegal. Recently, I advised the government of Barbados on oil and gas. So people are still investing. You have BHP and Woodside still investing in those places. And oil and gas will stay for the next 30 years before we even talk about renewable and all the rest of them. And those are the two perspectives. Now, and I will give you examples. I'm not really going to talk about policy, blah, 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 because that's, no matter how good the law is, if you don't have the political will to implement it, it will never go anywhere. So all this talk about the PIA, blah, 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 and all the rest of it, it can have all the best provision. Because is the government willing to implement it? Is the government willing to leave the goalpost as it is? Is the commission willing to leave the goalpost? As an investor, is there any certainty about the rules of the game? Because if I borrow money from bank, for example, on a rate of 5% interest, and all of a sudden government increases tax and shift the goalpost, it impacts that deal I've already had with the bank, which is the basis upon which I've made that investment. It's as simple as that. So I had the privilege also many years back to train the members of the House of Reps upstream on the Nigerian oil and gas law, which was the petroleum agreement. I told them that from a practical point of view, I didn't see anything wrong with that law. It was just about the political will to implement it. And I also worked through the Department for International Development to advise the government on the Petroleum Industry Act. We actually reviewed it for attractiveness to foreign investment. Now you take, for example, the PIA, which has got 2 layers of taxes. You talk about hydrocarbon tax and CIT. Even though the hydrocarbon tax has been removed, it is not tax deductible when you're paying for company income tax. So it relatively increases the government take. Now, you talked about host community fund and a host of other things have been introduced. For a company to set up a department to run those taxes, government doesn't think about this when they make money. You create layers of work for companies. So for a company to actually understand how to set up a host community fund, how to run all this. It has to have a whole department that has to budget $1 million a year, including pension when they retire. That is the impact of that provision. Forget about increasing government take. That's one thing. So these are some of the things companies consider. So if I'm coming to Nigeria to invest, beyond the prospectivity, the geology, and whatever it is, I will do what we call back of envelope calculation. Angola, effective royalty rate is 10%, Nigeria effective IRR and all the rest of them. And I'll just do back of the envelope, and it shows me my return on investment and my internal rate of return at the end of the day. And I've said, no, I can't go to Nigeria. So these are the things the government does not take into account when they're making all these legislation. It's not the banner, the headlines. Tax reduced 30% and all. But great work for the company. I give you also another example. Last year, we joined with a local company to bid for 4 blocks. I won't give much details. We are told, oh, this thing will happen in 2 months and all that. We gathered all the banks, showed evidence of payment, agreed term sheet. 1 year plus, we have not heard from the government. Even a formal communication to say, guys, this thing is still on. So if I budgeted money, recruited people, and kept them for that asset, and I'm still paying them salary for 1 year, and still waiting to hear from the government on whether we're successful or not, that was a private tender. Why would I want to return to that kind of place at the end of the day? You see, so these are some of the issues for those who have been in there. They look at this and say, okay, why would I want to go back? It may sound very interesting that government has done this, done that. But when you wear the shoe, you know where it is pinching you. Now, we've invested over $300 million in Nigeria. One company, there are about 6, is a joint venture, 6 companies. To repatriate even 10 million has been very difficult because of lack of corporate governance. Our partners in Nigeria embezzle the money, fight every day, short-term vision. You know, they don't want the long-term to sustain the project. They just want to take the money as quickly as possible because they are being carried. Okay, you invested 300 million, there's no return. All of us left Nigeria and came back to the UK. So why would I want to go back to Nigeria to put in this money? So that much said about, you know, someone who is invested. I will also talk about someone who wants to come in. Now, Dr. Felix talked about, reserves and all the rest of them. If one barrel produced today can never be produced again, it's as simple as that. So there has to be effort on reserve replacement and development of infrastructure. You have to make the rules very clear. A big company like Shell will have infrastructure. They will not want tie-in with other smaller companies. There is no regulation. The new PRC cannot help you with all these things. So if I have $50 million, I put it in a project, and I'm now being asked to go and build my own infrastructure. When I have companies I can piggyback on terms that are commercially viable. If I'm not able to do that, why would I put that money down? It's not about the first money you raise to put in oil and gas exploration. It's about the sustainability. So you need to see the rules. You need to see how clear they are. You need to see whether it is encouraging. Now, look at this again. We are talking about 2024 licensing round for new entrants. I've been working on this in the last 1 month. You say Nigeria, people say, guys, unless it is a producing field and we are clear on the return on investment, we're not interested. They are looking for $1 billion market capitalization. $1 billion. That's what the commission is looking for offshore. Then they're looking for $250 million market capitalization for onshore and shallow waters. And you have to demonstrate cash in the bank, cash of $250 million. Which country in the world does that? Are you actually, I mean, what are you trying to say? Now, they talk about security clearance. As an investor, have to get through DSS clearance. Even though they would run that now, they said they still reserve the right to do that. Are we really serious? Okay, so an NPC, for example, is still acting as a regulator. Government every day in the news, you hear the government talking about an NPC, which is supposed to be a private company, as it is now. They went to New York to raise money. How much did they raise? I remember one of my CEOs asking me, is an NPC serious? Is an NPC really serious about raising money? And then when they haven't done, and it's not in Nigeria. And that's when they've not done in-house cleansing and all the rules and regulations being said very clearly. You know, I don't want to take much of the time. I really have a lot to talk about, but I believe with some of these things, you know, we will begin to understand the myriads of the issues that we are facing as a country. Gone are the days when Nigeria and the few African countries had oil and gas. Almost every other country in Africa has oil and gas now. We are in 8 countries in Africa. So I can tell you, even in Cameroon, very close to Nigeria. So when you take all of these things to account as an investor, these are some of the things to consider before putting your money. It's not just about the headline. Nigerian companies need to invest in corporate governance. Look at another example of the Seplat acquisition. How long has it taken for that? It was approved before by the government and then cancelled. What message are you sending out to potential investors that the rules of the game are not clear? If I put $20 billion when I want to sell, it's going to be very difficult. Now, before I round up, we are trying to sell an asset, and we are being told we have to do due diligence on you, the seller. Due diligence for what? Okay, I want to check whether I had any decommissioning liabilities if not paid. So will you ask me if with those decommissioning liabilities not exit the asset and allow another person who has money to develop it? If you were not able to address this thing while production was on, how do you think it's going to be easy for me to bring out money when there's no more production from the field? I mean, I don't have the time to talk about the fiscal regime and all the rest of the issues, but I think you can see how my mind is working. And I will leave it at that so that others can also contribute. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bede.